Welcome back to Switch to Linux. Well, the upgrade path for Linux Mint 19 to Linux Mint 20 has been released last week, and today we want to talk a little bit about this. Should I upgrade? This was a big question. Of course, you know I like Linux Mint, and I like a lot of the things that came up in Linux Mint 20, and I actually agree with Linux Mint in the middle of the great Linux debate. But what I do want to also say while saying that is that I have never consistently recommended to necessarily change your distribution version unless there's a very explicit reason to do so. So I actually have my two computers laying around here that I do work on either in my office or when I'm on the road are both running Linux Mint. Now, one of those is a little bit older and still running Linux Mint 18.3. One of those is a little bit newer and running Linux Mint 19.3. With the addition of Linux Mint 20, I have no intention of upgrading either of those systems up to Linux Mint 20 unless there comes something that introduces instabilities or things like that, because there's always going to be the possibility. The question is, do I need some of the latest and greatest packages? I really don't, because with those computers, the latest packages I might need, I already have installed through PPAs or other means. Since Linux Mint 19 is supported through 2023, that is 3 more years from now, I don't see a reason to change the version of the distro there either. I'm going to continue to have good, stable support. Everything is going to continue to work. And there's no real hardware reason I want to upgrade to the latest version either. So with all that being said, my general recommendation first is if you're running Linux Mint 19.3 and it's running well for you, don't upgrade to 20. One of those is, as I mentioned, everything's working, don't bother messing with it. Another one might simply be, hey, don't poke at the gate unless there's something to do. You know, I mean, in other words, if everything is working, don't bother changing it. You could potentially introduce bugs. Additionally, every single time a new version of software comes out, there are inherently going to be bugs. We're seeing this in Linux Mint 20 as well. There are some devices that are having some issues with it, but that's the same case with every distribution until a few updates are pushed through. So overall, I generally do not recommend upgrading up to Linux Mint 20 just because everything's working on 19, keep running it. But if you've been through all that, you're like, okay, there are legitimate reasons to change, you know, whatever it happens to be, you might want to follow the upgrade path. So here it is at their website, published July 9th, 2020. So for updating this, now in many distributions, you can just do a disk dash upgrade and it will upgrade everything. In this, it's actually a separate tool. It actually used to be something you can put inside of the menu itself, but it's actually, they actually put it somewhere else now. So it does say take your time, read all the instructions, don't panic. All this is inside of the user's guide upgrading to the latest. So Linux Mint is developing a full-fledged user guide for running their system. So here what we want to do is kind of walk through what they're saying to do. Both the 32 and 64-bit versions are supported until 2023. New releases are only in 64-bit architecture. So to upgrade Linux Mint 20, you'll need to be running the 64-bit version of Linux Mint 19.3. You can double check your architecture if you run the dpackage print architecture command. If it says AMD 64, you can upgrade to 20. If it says i386, you're running a 32-bit version. And in this case, you cannot upgrade and you'll have to stick with 19.3. So experience with apt. To upgrade Linux Mint 20, you need experience with apt and the command line. Again, this used to be something that was easily inside of their upgrade manager. They would add an extra menu item. Unclear to me why they took that one out. This does not bother me. I know some people are like, they're not user-friendly anymore. No, I disagree. Even a new user can run a command from the terminal if needs be. And I'd recommend if you do need this, I would just take your home folder, wipe your computer, and reinstall 20 fresh. That's my personal recommendation anyway. But nevertheless, we're going to run through the guide as it is. Upgrading to a newer package base is not trivial and should not be performed by novice users, hence making it a little bit harder. You need to know how to type commands and read their outputs. You need experience with apt. During the upgrade, you'll need to understand the output of the apt commands. You'll need to understand if a package needs to be removed, if it blocks the upgrade, or if it conflicts with another package. So the first thing is applying all package updates. You want to make sure that your system is completely up to date. All right, then you want to go ahead and apply everything. It does recommend doing custom system snapshots, and unless you change this, the upgrade will not proceed without you doing this. If you are more advanced and you want to, here is down here at the bottom, skipping the time shift requirement. So you can edit this tool to ship the, to basically remove the time shift requirement there. Okay, so that is something that you do need to run the time shift unless you're manually overriding that. All right, you want to purge third-party PPAs and repositories. This is because some of these will conflict. Some of them are going to bring in dependencies that might conflict with the upgrade. It's best to disable them all and then flush the cache and then run your upgrade and then test them one by one to make sure that everything is turned back on. So in installing the upgrade tool, you're going to just run the apt install mint upgrade, and then you do mint upgrade check. You want to do this mint upgrade check because this is going to let you know if your system is going to work well or not. All right. And then here's the downloading the packages, mint upgrade download, and then mint upgrade upgrade. So basically just a few individual commands. So let's go ahead and boot into a virtual machine set up on Linux Mint 19.3 and show you how you can change that over to Linux Mint 20. So here we are on the desktop. I already opened up the document here over here so we can follow along on screen as well. I did run system updates on Linux Mint 19.3, so we are all up to date. And I did install a few extra packages. Of most interest in the entire debate is Chromium. I also pulled up FileZilla. I installed the Bible Time application. I didn't actually do anything with any of these, but and I think I installed something else too. I don't know. I installed a few different tools and things. All right, so everything here is running good. So this guy's running well. Here's FileZilla. That seems to be running well. Let's go ahead and also launch up Chromium, see how that's running here. Let's have a quick gander there. All right. So here we are, and we have Chromium. Everything is running just fine. All right, so the first thing, we are going to have to boot up a terminal, and the first thing we want to do is just double check to make sure that we are on a 64-bit system. I mean, I know I am here, but let's go ahead and test it out anyway. As long as I can spell architecture. Of course not. I can type that wrong. There we are. So you can see AMD 64. So that means we are good to go. We have necessary apt. I also already ran Timeshift. We're not going to walk through how to skip over that, but so I don't use Timeshift much. I'll just kind of show you that we have a Timeshift backup already in place. So you can see we have one backup that I've already done, so it's already set to go. So if I need to restore this, I can go ahead and restore it. All right, so that's already done. We do not have any third-party repositories. You can actually check, let's see, I think it's called software sources here in Linux Mint. So if you pull up the software sources, head on over to PPAs. Over here, if you had PPAs installed, you can go ahead and enable them. Just make sure they're disabled. And then you can update your cache, or you can walk through the process that they have here. Launch software, open the repositories, disable all PPAs, click the button to refresh, open a maintenance tab, click on downgrade foreign. Now, downgrade foreign is going to drop all the dependencies back down to the original Linux Mint. You can test reinstalling those later on if you do want to, but it is important to go ahead and back those up prior to running your update. It does tell you at the bottom there, create another snapshot. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and install. Now it says here apt install, but we are going to have to do sudo apt install. So sudo apt install mint upgrade. And so this is going to install some extra software. So that's what we need to do. All right, so now we're just going to use the Mint upgrade application on the terminal to do a few different things. The first is we want to go ahead and check it to make sure everything is good. So here's Mint upgrade, and we're going to hit our check. So what the check is going to do is it's going to basically point the repositories, and then it will simulate upgrading anything, and it will let us know if there is any problems here. So it's going to basically, the first point it's going to tell us is it's going to point all our repositories to the new version, going to test everything, and then it's going to point it back to the correct versions at the end of the command. So what we're going to do is this is basically running sudo apt update, and then it's going to simulate one of the sudo apt dist upgrade packages. Only it's not actually going to run the update, it's just going to simulate it. So when we do that, it will tell us if anything is going to pass, if anything is going to fail. So over here, it's telling us here that it's going to run anything. If conflicts are detected and apt is unable to perform the upgrade, take note of the packages causing them, remove those packages and restart it. Pay close attention to what appears on the screen, particularly the packages being removed. Note any you wish to reinstall. It will remove some applications. So this is particularly useful information for me, who oftentimes will run I'll run custom PPAs and things like that. And you just want to make sure those are disabled, and then you can usually re-enable them later. It's just you want to verify that first. So it says it completed successfully. Nothing is going to conflict. So that is perfectly okay. So the next part of the command is going to be the download. So we're going to do mint upgrade download. So do you want to proceed? We're going to say yes. It's going to be downloading the repositories and the other information that we need. So this is going to be the first step towards actually making the changes rather than just testing it and then clearing all of that out. So at the end of this, we're just going to go ahead and type the mint upgrade. And then it should actually be set to go unless there's anything else custom that you did to your system. So here is some things it's going to remove. So basically it's just removing some softwares, and then it's going to add some new ones. So we'll be back when this is done. All right, so that upgraded. So the very last command is just going to be mint upgrade space upgrade. When this is done, it should run flawlessly. So it's going to upgrade everything here in my Linux Mint up into the newest version, and then we're going to be able to see that it's going to work out pretty well. So we'll come on back when we are done with the upgrade process. All right, so partway through here, it says there are services installed in your system which need to be restarted. Certain libraries such as lippom, libc, libssl need to be upgraded. This restart causes interruptions. In other words, do you want to restart the services without asking? I'm just going to say yes, it's going to update them and then start and restart the services. Not a real big deal unless you're running a server. All right, so here we got to the last step. It tells us the upgrade is finished. Reboot the computer with sudo reboot when ready. We'll go ahead and close this down, and we'll see if this guy reboots. All right, so we've landed on the login screen. So far, so good. Let's go ahead and boot this guy up, and then we're going to have a look at a couple of things here. All right, so here, if I'm not mistaken, I think it actually did change the wallpaper around on us. We do have a notification there in our newly installed update manager. Let's go ahead and pull up I always forget, what's it called? System information here. Let's verify what we are on. So we're running Linux Mint 20, cinnamon version 4.6.6, Linux kernel 5.0. Okay, everything else looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and see what the update manager is yelling about. So sure, we want to go ahead and do that. And it looks like it wants to update the kernel from 5.0 to 5.4. We'll go ahead and pass for that update just for the time being. Now, the 3 packages that I installed on this, I actually installed these 3 for a specific reason. FileZilla is going to be one that I'm going to expect to work either way. All right, so let's go ahead and have a quick look at Firefox real quick. So 78, so I believe that's the latest version. So remember I installed a few extra applications. Internet, notice that Chromium is no longer installed on the system. So what happens is when you have Chromium installed and you roll up, it is still going to be the same Chromium version. Basically, it rolls up the Chromium version. So Chromium browser version. So he says it's not installed, but you can install it with apt install Chromium browser. If I go ahead and do that, and I want to install it, it'll actually should tell me it's already the newest version. This is because it's running the empty package. Now, this is the part about the Linux Mint snap debate that I disagreed with, as far as if you're going to add this Chromium package, they should have just went ahead and packaged the Debian version, because it's easy enough to add anyway. You may as well do that. I'm not going to harp on that because it's easy to get Chromium back for the people that actually need it. All right, I did install FileZilla, and I'm expecting that that will work, which it does seem to. There has been some issue and debate about Bible time. And the reason for this is in Ubuntu, the latest version of Ubuntu, there is an issue with the Qt and the Bible time application. This one does appear it's probably going to work. I have to go in and install something in order to verify that. Let's just go ahead and install one book here, see if it actually works. But there was an issue about that, so I was not sure if this was fixed, or maybe Ubuntu downstream already fixed it. But last time I knew, this company was telling you to use the Flatpak, which, by the way, doesn't actually work right, because they have accidentally shipped the release candidate 3.0 and you can't do anything else, which is another one of those reasons why I'm not a huge fan of any of these full package systems. Let's just go with that. Let's just install this one work and just verify that this guy works. So overall, it does appear as that things are looking correct. We should have, let's see, we have Warpinator on there. That's a new thing. All right, let's go ahead and boot this guy up and see if this guy works. And yeah, it's working just fine. So that actually was fixed. There was a time that that application would not work because of the Qt version in Ubuntu. Now, one more thing I will mention here is I actually had to go back through and wipe out the old version that I had started the video on, and I reinstalled. The reason is that while it will not allow you to run the update without doing a Timeshift backup, the update process itself takes another backup. The problem is I'm running this test machine on a 20 gigabyte hard drive, and so if the Linux Mint team is watching, I would highly recommend that you go onto your Linux Mint update section and add a disk requirement, because what ended up happening is I already had the one backup. It would not allow me to proceed if I didn't have a backup, but it took a second Timeshift backup, basically taking well over 2/3 of the entire available disk. The disk filled completely up, the update failed, and made a system that was completely broken. Now, Linux Mint is so good, I was actually able to boot into the system. I could have used the computer. I could have made all of the downloading all of my data that I might want to. But the problem is I could not go back to the previous version unless I utilized Timeshift, and I could not go on and fix the new update install. So I basically had an effectively crippled system because my system would not allow me to start without a Timeshift backup, but it took a secondary Timeshift backup during the time of install, requiring 2 Timeshift backups. Now, if you're running this on real hardware and you have a terabyte disk in there, that's not a real big deal. But if you're running this in a smaller setting. So for example, if I were to have done this on my writing computer, which has a soldered in 32 gigabyte drive, it might have actually killed that computer entirely, forcing me to wipe the whole thing, and restart from scratch, which is a problematic thing. So I think that the biggest problem on the upgrade path is if you want to, it would be nicer if they gave you the option to say, yes, I understand the risks, don't take a secondary Timeshift backup, or allow you to skip, give a warning, not a failure on the Mint update check. And instead allow me to just verify. It's like, hey, I just took one before running this. There's no reason to take 2 of these backups. So it does force you to have 2 Timeshift backups, which in my case overwhelmed my disk. So I did go through, though, when I rebuilt the system halfway through so I could show you guys the rest of the update process. And all I did is I went back down through the user guide. And on the user guide, if you go back down to the bottom, I highlighted it down here at the bottom that there is this, if you need to skip the Timeshift requirement, you're just going to add this file. Now, the problem is you guys saw earlier where I booted up Timeshift and it never started. That's because that file is still there. I'm going to have to remove this file in order to bring Timeshift back. So in the event you have to do that, let's go ahead and we'll show you where that file is, and we'll go ahead and show you how to remove it. So what do we got? So there should be a Timeshift. Just go ahead and full screen that. There should be in here somewhere a timeshift.json file. There it is, timeshift.json file. So if we do you need to do a sudo rm timeshift.json file. That should, in theory, bring back our ability to boot up Timeshift. So let's go ahead and see if that will now boot. And now Timeshift boots. So you can see all we had to do is we had to add that file, which prevents Timeshift from booting. Go ahead and remove that file. Now Timeshift will boot. So there is our take on upgrading. So again, in final summary, if you're running 18.3, which is going to be supported until I think 2021 maybe, or 19.3, which is supported until 2023, and those are working for you, there is no reason to upgrade Linux Mint. I mean, I really don't see any reason to upgrade it at all. If your matter is kernels, you can always add new kernels to Linux Mint. It's something you can do. If you're talking about just needing certain software versions, there might be 1 or 2 different software versions you might need. For the most part, though, I'm never really an advocate of taking a perfectly good computer, wiping it out to install a new version of an operating system that has just come out. There's always going to be some inherent bugs early on. But for those people that do want to upgrade, or if you're running a test machine, or if you're in a case where it's like kind of like what I do, or I run more of an up-to-date, more modern rolling system to test new software on the one computer and keep back my production computer, keep your production computer back on Mint 18.3, Mint 19.3 for a while. And if you have your spare computer running around, go ahead and upgrade that to Linux Mint 20 so you can play around with it, verify everything works, and verify that everything is what you need. And then if it is absolutely worth it, if there's something in there that you definitely need, then you should go ahead and run that update. But anyway, this video hopefully will give you the way to update it, and even a workaround if in case of your full disk it failed. Take home message on that part. If you do not have a lot of disk space, if you're on a small hard drive, something like that, disable the Timeshift, or clear up enough space to make sure you have 2 backups. You have to run a backup to start it, and it will take a second backup during the process. That would have been useful information for me to know that wasn't necessarily clear in the documentation. So thanks for coming along on this video. Thank you to the Patreon and Think Life Media supporters that help keep this channel going. I appreciate you guys helping support us, and we will catch you guys next time.